All right, so a nice little feature of working with generics in TypeScript is that in many cases, TypeScript can actually infer a type. So just like you can infer a type when we do something like this, const, x equals 23, I don't have to annotate this and say x is a number because TypeScript can see that's a number. X is going to be of type, well, I used const, so it has to be 23, but let's say I used let. X has to be of type number. Well, same deal with our generic function getRandomElement. If I call getRandomElement, this time I'm working with, let's just go back to strings. And I say of type string, right? That's the type parameter to the generic function. And then I give it a list of strings, A and B. Well, that's not B, but that's also a string. I'm terrible at typing while talking, but those are valid strings. I get back something of type string. But I actually don't have to give this parameter. I don't have to tell this generic function the type, because if I leave that off, TypeScript is smart enough to look at this parameter or this argument, and it sees that it's a list of strings. It's an array of strings, so it can figure out that T is string. And check it out. There we are. It works, right? GetRandomElement string, no problem. So if I change this to numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, it can infer the type of that argument. It's a list of numbers, so it knows that it should return a number. I don't have to tell it that. But that's not always going to be the case with every generic. Just to be very clear about, there are many times you will need to provide the type parameter. Like we saw up here with getElementById, or rather with query selector, there's no way, if I just wrote this here, I'm saying document.querySelector, get something that has the class of btn. There's no way that TypeScript can know what elements on a different file, right? It doesn't even exist yet, or it may not exist yet, what type of object it is, what type of DOM element it is. It just doesn't know. There's no way. So it's going to use a default, and we'll learn how to add a default later. So I have to say, if I want it to be HTML button element, that is the type parameter. And that's because there's no relationship between this argument. This argument is a string. It's always a string. That's a class name, an ID, an element type. But that doesn't tell TypeScript anything about the actual return type, right? It doesn't say anything about what we're working with. It's just a label or a class or an ID. But down here, we expressed a very explicit relationship that says whatever this argument is, it's a list of T, we'll return something of type T. So TypeScript can figure that out. There's that relationship between the argument that we provide and the return value. So anyway, that's a nice little shortcut. You don't have to go around, using this generic type parameter syntax all the time. There are times you have to, but sometimes you can rely on TypeScript's ability to infer the type.